Welcome to the Walking in Aloha Let's Talk Story podcast. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. We're so excited to have Jen here. And I just wanted to come on and say welcome. But, you know, everyone, I just wanted to introduce Jen. She is such an amazing woman, so full of adventure. I just have to admit, I was scrolling through your Facebook and admiring your uh, photos and your amazing time you had. So let me introduce her properly before I get into all of that other stuff. Jen is the founder of Empower Her Effect Co. and a mental health and life coach with a powerful mission to help women overcome fear, embrace their worth, and live authentically. She is a survivor of life's storms, literally and figuratively. From losing everything in a tsunami to facing the challenges of COVID to rebuilding after setbacks. Through it all, she's discovered how to fuel her dreams daily and show others how to do the same. Her heart for women and her voice of truth inspire those who feel like they're not enough to step into who God created them to be. And I know her story will speak life and courage into you. And I hope that you will just gain all that she can give to you today on Walking in Aloha. Thank you, Jen, for coming in. How
Yeah,
are
thank
you
you for having
today?
me. I'm great.
Awesome, awesome. So before we dive in, I always like to pause and, speak about what we do here on the Walking in Aloha Let's Talk Story podcast. Because here in Hawaii, I was born here, raised here in Hawaii, and you can always, if you hear the word aloha, you think about Hawaii. And aloha is more than a greeting. It's not just hi and bye, but it's the breath of life. So alo is the closeness. It is to be in the presence of um, in Hawaii when we in the you probably wouldn't see it more so these days unless you see it in people who know, but we greet and then you put your foreheads together. Um, and it's the closeness. It's that closeness, the alo, and then that breath. So what it is that you breathe and it's the breath of life. So alo and ha is that breath of life. And, so aloha is more than just hi and goodbye. It's a way of life. We were raised with that respect. We were raised to live aloha. And I'm like, when I was writing my book, Walking in Aloha, um, I didn't know what to write. And I had to pray. And I was like, Lord, if you need me to write this book, you need to help me because I never wrote a book before and I don't know how to put my testimony out into the world without it feeling like I'm just venting or whatever. And I just didn't know how. I didn't know how. And I had to ask. And he said, I gave you everything in aloha. And I was like, how is that? And so I started writing it out. And so it ended up to be affirmations and actions, leadership and love, overcoming obstacles, health and healing, and acute awareness. And I was like, wow, that is exactly what he had to walk me through, the healing that I went through in order for me to be where I am today. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is so amazing. I'm like, God, you're so good, and of course, right? Of course he is. But yeah, so like I said, and it puts together that whole thing. But I realized that it's just not here in Hawaii. But whenever I spoke to people, whenever I shared it, and the more that I traveled the world, I realized that other people did the same and walked through the same things. And so I saw it in so many other people. And God revealed to me that people live out the aloha in their daily lives. So I always bring it here so people can share their aloha with everyone and how they walk through it. So I wanted to see how aloha reflects in your journey and the storms that you've weathered and the resilience that you've overcome and built, and how you empower women through the aloha framework that, you know, you probably never even knew that you were doing it, but everyone does. And that's one thing it's such a God-given gift. So let's just go into that. I wanted to hear how the aloha is showing up in your story.
But when I first was reading about aloha, it really resonated with me because
Yeah.
I feel like it shows up how I live, how I lead, how I love, because it's all about that connection, that courage, and the compassion. And it ties into my coaching framework, which is spark, stoke, and set on fire. And so, like that spark being where where that dream begins, that quiet whisper that you have saying, like, is there something more? Is this it? Is this all that there is for me? And then, stoking that is about taking action and the ups and downs that happen, but taking action and doing the work on a daily basis. And then setting on fire is just getting rid of those fears, those feelings of doubt, all of that, and really stepping into the person that you're meant to be, and stop apologizing for who you are and start to live like life with a purpose. And so when I think about aloha, I see it for me as love in action. It's how we breathe life into our spark. You then nurture it through the stoking, and then you boldly set it on fire so that you can show others what's possible for them too.
Oh, that is so awesome. That is just so great. So you talk about like in the affirmations. Okay, so we're gonna go through the affirmations and actions. The first A in aloha. You talk about fueling what's missing by feeding your dreams daily. What is one affirmation or small daily action that kept you moving forward when life knocked you down?
When situations came up, whether it was due to my own choices or just life in general, and I kept getting knocked down, what kept me moving was just remembering that even those little failures can be a light, right? I think a lot of women want a dream life, or they have a dream life, and some don't even realize it yet. But as women, we tend to put others before ourselves, and we almost start living in that survival mode, and we forget what it feels like to dream. And I always tell people, like, your spark isn't gone. It's just like buried under exhaustion and expectations that, we put, honestly, mostly we put them on ourselves, and that fear. And so you just have to take
Yeah.
that daily action, whether it's one small action a day. Just look inside and be honest with yourself. And the affirmation that I was telling myself daily was that I'm becoming the person that I already am. I was always was this person, and just circumstances and choices just made me kind of lose that person. And so then you find it again.
Yeah, that's so true. You talk about the spark, and one of my pastors told me about uh, this story on the coals in the fire. And if you pull the coal, one coal away from the rest, it starts to dim and it starts to die down. But when you bring them together, it's because they're with others, because they're closer to the other coals, that coal can regain that flame again, that heat again, right? So it's so good to be in community. For women listening who feel stuck, how can they start showing up authentically, even when fearing judgment?
I think just remembering what it was that they wanted, or dreams they had. Maybe it's even something small, like, oh, I always wanted to do this but life got in the way. And I think when fear and judgment is loud, the one thing that I have learned the most, and I go back and think about it every time, is the most fear you're ever going to have is in that little moment, right? That little moment just as you're about to overcome it. But once you're on the other side of that, there's such a freedom. And I think I've even used the word euphoric feeling. And it's so hard to explain it because until you do it, until you get over that fear, and everybody's different. But for me and many people that I talk to and working with, it's amazing to see that fear that they have and they're like on the brink of it, and then when they get to the other side, just to look on their face and see, like, oh my gosh, I did it, I overcame it, I what did I why did I wait so long, right? and
Yeah,
and I think what people don't realize, some people are like, oh, I'm not afraid of anything, I just don't want to do it, or I don't have time. And it's if you start digging a little bit deeper, which is why I love doing the mental health work that I do, when you start digging a little deeper, you realize that at at the end of the day, what's stopping you from doing things that you really want to do is fear. You can call it other things, but at the end of the day, when you get to the heart of the matter, it's fear. And so I just say, it doesn't have to be that big leap, but at least take those little steps every day that get you closer to that edge. And
that
celebrate
is a
celebrate every step that you take, celebrate it, because it's a big deal.
yeah, I love that. Celebrate. People forget to celebrate the smallest things. They wait until it's huge. And it's like, no, celebrate the small things because it's in those small little celebrations that push you to the next and then the next and the next, right? That's what moves you forward. Give me 1 second. I'm going to turn off this fan because I see a little bounce in my screen.
Sure.
Yeah, I didn't realize my fan was so powerful. It's bouncing my screen. But like I said, I live in Hawaii and it gets warm. So anyway, let's go to the leadership and love in L in Aloha. You've turned some of life's hardest setbacks, the tsunami, COVID, failed businesses, into stepping stones. How did leading yourself with love and resilience help you rise through those seasons?
Leadership, it starts with love, but I think most importantly, the thing to remember there is it starts with self-love. And
Yes.
there's a big difference between love and self-love. And those times when I felt like my world was falling apart, I had the two businesses crumble. So when the tsunami happened back in 2004, it wasn't it wasn't directly, it didn't directly hit my business, but I did lose a lot of friends out there, and it just kind of set my business back. So when I say my business fell apart because of this tsunami, I think mentally I was just in a very weird place because I had lost so many friends, and then some, a lot of people that I was close to, they lost family members and things when they hit, and it just kind of slowed down my business, and I kind of just didn't really have the energy to build it back up again. I had actually started my business out in the Philippines and Malaysia. So that's where most of my business was. And when the tsunami hit, I was actually back in the US. And just the thought of like starting it over again was just a lot for me. And then when I lived in Arizona for a few years after that, and then COVID, struck, and my business kind of went downhill because I worked with a lot of smaller companies that had,
Mhm.
stores, physical locations, and not online products. I worked with a lot of like remodeling contractors, so they really didn't have, you know, online presence. So that's where the business fell apart there. And I had, built that over again a few times over with my business partner. And I knew I needed something different. I also was questioning like my worth at the time, and like, why does this keep happening to me? And I just realized that like leading myself through love was how I kept on kind of like stoking that fire, right? I stopped treating myself like I was a project, I guess, that needed to be fixed, and I really started treating myself like someone that was worth fighting for. Like I'm better than this. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Figure it out. And at the end of the day, it's going to be my happiness and my life. So I tell the women that I work with, like, stoke that fire daily. Take the daily actions towards the things that you want. Like, you can be a mom, you can be a wife, and you can still go after you want. Like, it's not always going to be easy, but like there's just something very freeing about doing that.
So good. For me, I was in a horrible domestic violence situation, and that's where my book, Walking in Aloha, came from. And it was in that self-love that helped me out of that situation, because if I didn't love myself enough to say, I need to be safe, and I kept thinking about everybody else, I had family living in the home, my niece was still living there. I was thinking about so many other people that I kept staying. And I was like, you know, well, he was a very good narcissist. I don't know how can I say good and narcissist in the same sentence, but he was really good at it. I never knew the word until I healed and learned that that's what it was. So going through that and having to say, I need out. I cannot be in that. You guys will be all right, and having to think about myself. That was huge for me because I grew up always thinking about other people, always putting other people in front of me. And I was like, yeah, that's self love and leading out of that. So that's where the love and leadership came from. And I was like, that is so important that people see that self love is not selfish. It is very important that you
Right.
recognize those things and you need to take time for yourself. Because for me, like I was doing, it was way too long. It was years upon years of me thinking about everybody else and seeing what they needed. So I stayed in that relationship because of what other people needed. And he knew it and he would use it. He would say, if you say anything, they would be homeless or they wouldn't have a place to stay. And, or like the weirdest things in the middle of playing with my niece. We could be doing, like having a good time, and we'd be playing and laughing. And he would look at me and he would say, "See, if you say anything, she would be on the street." And you would be like, uh, in this shock feeling,
Mhm.
like, oh my gosh.
Mhm.
But those kind of things. And, so working those things into your life where you say, I am important enough to, you know, l- love myself and make time, like you said, make time for that. Stoke that spark every day because it is
Mhm.
important, you know. Because if you think about it, you would have to recognize that spark is going out, that spark is dimming somehow. We better start doing something to reignite that flame. So
Yes, I have
I
sticky
love
notes.
your signature topic, res- resilience in real life. Can you share a story of a moment that looked like the end, but instead became the beginning of something new?
Obstacle. I think of obstacles and I'm like, oh, there's so many. um, when I look back, honestly, when I look back on all the obstacles, I can see now that every single one of them led me to where I am today. And it sounds so cliche, but it's just very true. After the
Hmm.
tsunami and losing like the momentum in that business, and then, COVID leading, you know, having that come to a halt, I decided to go back to corporate America, and the benefits were great. The steady paycheck was nice, but I didn't have any freedom. And so after almost 2 years, I ended up getting laid off there. And it wasn't necessarily that I thought it was like the end, but it was a blessing in disguise. And I was really at this crossroads in my life where it's like, okay, I can send out my resume again, or I can go back to building a business again. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And I had a lot of people that were telling me, you should be a life coach, and you help everybody all the time. And I had always dreamt of being a motivational speaker or something like that. I mean, Tony Robbins is one of my biggest mentors, so you can imagine. And I decided to sign up and go back to school for to get my life coach certification. And I instead of earning income, we were paying for school. But I thought, okay, that's like the first stepping stone that I needed to do. And it was hard. I knew it was going to be hard. Um, when I got my certification and trying to start my own business, I didn't realize how hard it was going to be to market myself in a way that people felt comfortable and trusted me enough to share things that they may never have shared with anybody else, and especially doing the mental health work. So I tried to do it my way. It took me a while to understand that when people say, like, don't reinvent the wheel, like, find your mentors and do exactly what they're doing and you'll be successful. No, I reinvented the wheel. I thought, like, no, I'm going to do it this way. So that's really where I just had to keep coming, getting over all of these different obstacles I kept facing. And it wasn't until I decided that I was going to do small in person events, like live events, that I feel like things started shifting for me. Because when I said it, and it was actually in a coaching session that I had myself, that I was like, oh, that's a great idea. I should start doing that. And it really started, I don't know what to even call it, but I guess that spark, right? Like, I'm like, oh, this is it. This is the best way to get me to where I want to be. It's not the one on one coaching. And while I love doing the one on one coaching, I think there's something to be said about being in a group. And I wasn't looking to group, or do, 25, 30 people. I really wanted it to be small and intimate to have those people really be able to support each other. So I think like that's what I mean. Like when I tell my clients to like set it on fire, it's not about burning down your life. It's really it's really about like burning away like the lies, the fears, the doubts, the I'm not good enoughness, if that's even a word,
Mhm.
until like only the truth is left. And so when fear shows up, and it does for me all the time still, I just tell my clients, like, set it on fire, turn that fear into fire, because again, that scariest part of the fear is the moment right before you take that step to overcome it.
Nice. So when fear shows up, and it always does, how do you coach the women to choose courage over fear?
It's about just getting to the heart of the matter of where that fear stems from, because it's different for
Mm, yeah,
everybody. And then just going through some different techniques and things to get them to have a mindset shift about that fear. That's kind of what happened with me to start me getting over these little fears I had of people judging me, and they come back, but now I have the techniques and the tools to be able to, the second they're in my head, I can just get them out of my head as fast as I can. And I want to be able to give people the tools to be able to overcome those things when it shows up for them. So I work with them and figure out where those fears are really stemming from. I get them to name the fear, because I think when you name the fear and kind of have a conversation with that fear, it starts to disappear. It's not as scary anymore. So it's like a little process that I go to, but that's how I
nice.
will help people do that.
That is so good. That is so good because we all have it, and like you said,
Mhm.
for you now you can just you see it, you feel it, you're like, "Oh, it's I can take care of it right away."
Mhm.
And that is a tool that we all should have because as a speaker, as a coach, there's going to be times when you feel it in yourself. You're like, "Ooh, do I have that right answer? Do I have do I have the thing to say right now?" And you don't have the time to be like, "Ah, ooh, hold a moment." You know?
So true. So
Give
true.
me a second, right? You don't have that moment, so you have to be able to flip that switch and be like, "It's okay, I got it. I
Right.
got it." And then just push that fear away. Because I don't think that honestly anyone can just say, "I've conquered fear and it never came back again." You know? I don't think
Yeah.
anyone can honestly say that.
No, and
I've
if they
spoken
can,
to
I would like to meet them and get all of their tips and
I
secrets.
know. I know, right? I know, because I've spoken to so many people and I've never heard it yet. So
Right, right.
so awesome. Health and healing, H in Aloha. As a mental health and life coach, what role has healing mentally, emotionally, and spiritually played in your journey to authenticity?
Healing for me was that bridge between who I was and who I was becoming and still am becoming. The mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, like I had to learn how to slow down, listen to people, and be present. I had to learn how to be present, because I found that in conversations with people, I was always constantly thinking about all the other things that I needed to be doing. And I needed to really just slow down and be present with people. And when I did that, I feel like just amazing things started to happen. My connection happened much quicker. I think I built that trust with people that they needed. I mean, I work with so many people and just know so many people that, they check all the boxes like career, family, what their idea of success is, but they still feel like there's something missing. And I've been there. I lived it for so long and I had a great, I have, but like at the time I had a great life. I was married, I had a kid, I have amazing friends and family, but there was just something that that little spark, right? It was just like there's something more and I'm not doing it. And that was helping people. And so I remind my clients like that ache, it's not failure. It's like your soul, right? Speaking to you, saying like your spark is there. Just like stoke it a little, start taking some actions and just work towards whatever it is that you want.
Yeah.
And
Like
I
you
think
just said,
authenticity is tied into that. I think when you're doing what you really love and what you really want to do, you're being authentic, whatever that looks like. Because like real healing, it's not fixing yourself. It's about remembering yourself, going
yeah,
back to that person.
like it's not fixing yourself, it's being yourself and being that
Mhm,
true self, you know, because so many times we trying to fix something to match something else. We're trying
mhm,
to fix it to match something that we thought we're supposed to be or somebody else thought that we're supposed to be like, but that's not who we truly should be. That's not who we're created to be. So like that becoming the person that God created us to be, you're like, wait a
mhm.
minute, that's not who I was. Or.
Right, right.
So to go back to the who was I or what brought me joy when I was a younger kid, right? Um, as a younger me, what brought me joy? And then went back to there, then you can see that authenticity. Then you can see like, oh, that's where I need to start from to heal from. Like I love to paint and I love to do this and why didn't I do it now? Why am I not doing it now? It's because
Mhm.
life gets in the way. But
Yeah.
that is true. So so good, so good. Many women try to check all the boxes, career, family, success, yet still feel that something's missing. I know I was one and I always was like, oh, there's something more. There's just got to be something more, right? What's your advice for those who need to pause, and like you said, slow down and realign with what truly matters?
It's honestly simple. It's just taking that couple minutes. It doesn't even need to be an hour. At first, it was like, oh, I don't have an hour in my day to do this and to do that. And it's like, it doesn't need to be an hour. Just a few minutes just to sit down with yourself and journal. And I know everybody, when they hear the word journal, they're like, oh, but journaling actually really helped me. And it wasn't typing on the computer journaling, it wasn't until I started pen to paper journaling, just whatever was on my mind. And I would set a timer for 10 minutes. And sometimes I was done in five. Sometimes it was like 10 pages later. And I'm like, oh, this is what happened. But going back and reading those, it's crazy to see where I was in a mental, emotional, and spiritual place at the time because my spiritual journey didn't start until later. But I think aligning with yourself in all three of those ways is huge. And spiritual does not have to mean, I kept thinking spiritual means God and everything else. And I was putting so much pressure on that. And it didn't. It was just find that whatever spiritual looks like to you. And again, later in life is when I kind of found that, but mentally and emotionally played a really big part in making sure that I was straight with that, and that I and journaling helped me with that. For some other people, I know meditation is a big thing, doing yoga, but I think the most important advice I can give is to just sit with yourself and really think about like that alignment, like what truly matters to you. And maybe you don't know what it is,
Yeah,
but start thinking about it.
that is so good. In September, I did this whole 30-day, and there's that one nursery rhyme or something, 30 days, half September.
Yeah,
And so I, yeah,
I do.
30 days, half September, April, June, and November, whatever. I did a whole 30 days in September where I got on and I did a journaling journey. And so that's what it was, where I would come on and I would give a journaling prompt and I would give something to do, an action step to just continue to journal because I'm a Christian and in the Bible it talks of in Habakkuk 2:2, it talks about writing it down and I never, like you said, pen to paper, right? And it says to write it down on tablets. So what does that mean? It doesn't, like write it down on tablets
Yeah.
so
Mhm.
that some so that I think it said the runner or somebody. Anyway, so that the messenger can take it and run with it. And a lot of times when we write in our journal, you mentioned about reading it back, right? So sometimes when we're writing in our journal, it's not that we're giving it to somebody else so that they can take the message, but sometimes we need to remember that message, that thing that we wrote down, and we look at it and we're like, oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
remember that. Or
Mhm.
when you think that all this time has gone by and I never, I know I get like that sometimes. I get all dramatic, but I'm like, oh my
Don't
gosh,
we all?
you know, you're like, I never, I never got anything done this year, and I never did this. And then you look back and you're like, no, look at what I've done. Look at all
Mhm.
the things that I've done. I did this and I did that, and so now you know. And then you it's a great reminder. So journaling is amazing. It helps a lot of people. And yeah, like you said, people go, oh no, not another journaling thing.
Yes.
But it is. And I can honestly say, you mentioned Tony Robbins, and there are many, many huge speakers and
Mhm.
people out there who are very successful and they will attest to journaling. So it is something that, like you mentioned, it is important and people should journal. They should write it down, document it somehow. And yeah, there's people who don't want to write. So go ahead and type it out or go ahead and there's people who now journal through their phone. They
Mhm.
just talk and they have
Oh
the
yeah.
dictation, but still there is documentation because when you dictate on your phone, it does transcribe and you do have it now in text. So that is a way that people can journal that way. So guys, there's no excuse. I'm giving you
Mhm.
guys all these tools and all these tips. There's no excuse. You really should start. And like I said, I did the 30-day journaling in September. But if you go ahead and you look at my podcast, you will not see 30 days. Why? Because it's recorded, but I don't have the time to upload. And so in 2026, I told my husband, "Hun, I can't do it by myself. I need a virtual assistant. I truly need a virtual assistant." I do. And the thing is that I realized, like, I went to work and I was so frustrated, and I was like talking to one of my coworkers, and I said, "Oh my gosh, I was just talking to Bruce, and he doesn't understand why I need a virtual assistant." And he acted like it was just like nonsense, right? And I'm thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'm so crazy. I don't know." And then she looked at me and she goes, "Does he think that your virtual assistant is a real person?" And I was like, "What? Why wouldn't he?" And she goes, "No, really, think about it. There's so much with the AI thing. Does he really understand that when you say virtual, that you're not talking about an AI person, you're actually talking about a real life person. They're just not in Hawaii with you." I'm like,
Mhm.
"I don't think so. I think you're right." I was like, "I think you're right. I I never thought about it that way, but you know what? That could be it." That's why I got that
Right.
look of, "Oh my gosh, you are crazy. You're not gonna hire a virtual assistant," you know? And he looked at me like I just lost my mind.
Yeah.
So it's like
I
it was
get
a
it
huge
though, I
laugh,
get
and I was
it.
like, "Yeah." And when only when she said it, because she came to me and she was like,
Mhm,
"Does he think your person is not real?"
mhm,
And I'm like,
mhm.
"Oh my, you are right." She goes, "Yes. Make sure that he knows your person is a real person, just doesn't live in Hawaii, she lives in another country or something." I was like, "Oh
Right.
my goodness." Ah, those awareness of how you say things and how you look at things. It's just so good. But
Yes.
that just leads me into the last A in Aloha, acute awareness, because I was not aware of that. But you often say redefining enough is key. What helped you shift from chasing perfection to embracing that authenticity?
I started noticing all, and it was actually a conversation with someone, several, but I started noticing that I was spending so much time chasing this feeling. I wasn't like chasing something physical. It was like this feeling. And so no matter what I did, no matter how many times I said yes, no matter how many times I volunteered, whatever it was, I was never getting that feeling or whatever it was that I was looking for, because I don't necessarily know that I knew what I was looking for, if that makes sense. So for me, like, awareness was the moment that I realized that being perfect wasn't protecting me. It was actually suffocating me and like holding me back. And I did started noticing all the ways that I was like chasing what looked good, and what I thought I was supposed to do as a mom, a wife, instead of what felt right. Just like living and doing what felt right. So for me, I think redefining enough, it just comes from that story that I had, like I'm not enough, and so I was always chasing validation and chasing approval. And it still comes back. It came back when I did my audition video for the speaking competition. It came back, but it really just showed me like being authentic is the way to connect to people. Being perfect is not, just not.
Right. That is so true. I always tell people if you're waiting for things to be perfect before you start, you will be waiting for a long time,
Correct.
because things will never be perfect. You just
Hmm.
need to start, you know? It's not that, like I say, this right here is my garage. If I waited and I was like, my dream was, we need a bigger house. I need my own room. I need a studio, you know?
Hmm.
And I can compare it with other things like when I had my house and,
Yes.
when I had that and I had this room and I had my own. No, it's you're waiting for something or you're thinking about something you had in the past and it's not going to happen. So if you want it now, if you want something to change now, it's your choice to change it now or keep talking about it and waiting because perfect will never happen. You're just going to have to do something and make it happen, I guess.
Hmm.
What are some practical ways women can tune into their true selves and help themselves step boldly into the life that they're meant to live?
One thing, it was something that you just said now that made me think of this, but um, comparing yourself to other people. I think that we spend so many times comparing our life, and what we have or don't have to what other people have or don't have, instead of just like looking at ourselves. And I think being aware of that, like awareness, like it is that new spark. It's that awakening within you that says there is more to life than this. And to stoke that spark and get that flame, you do it by truth, journaling, praying, reflecting, whatever it is, but making sure that you're aligning your choices with who you really are. So taking that daily action every day. I became very aware of the fact that I was doing so much busy work as opposed to doing and taking the action. Like, yes, I was taking action, but there was a fear that was holding me back from saying yes to going on a podcast or doing my own podcast myself or whatever it was. And when I really stepped into what I wanted to do and I started listening to myself and telling myself like I'm the person who I always was meant to be. Like you can't unhear it. And I wake up every day telling myself, like, you're a motivational speaker, you're a mental health and life coach. And when you feel it, you start living it, and then you can't stop and you actually become that person that you're supposed to be. So I think just not listening to all the noise. And I get that it's so much easier said than done because I lived it. I was there. I was living in that. Oh, I can't say this out loud because nobody's going to believe me. It's like, but I am a life coach. I'm a mental health life coach too. And I have helped a lot of people. I am a motivational speaker, empowerment speaker, however you want to call it. I have been doing it longer than quote unquote officially doing it, just through like trainings and even owning my own business and things like that. So I think just knowing what you want, figuring that out, finding out what that piece is that's missing, even if you don't know that there's a piece missing.
Exactly. That is so good. You know how you said doing it longer than you have officially been doing it.
Hmm.
I like the way you said that because how many of us can say that we have helped people, we have been doing what we doing. You know, people ask me, "Oh, how long have you been coaching?" Well, officially, you know,
Right.
I I have I've led small groups at churches, and I've been doing things for ages upon ages. Before I moved back to Hawaii, I had small groups in my home in the mainland, things like that. But did I call it coaching? Did I know it was coaching? Did I know that? No, we were
Mm,
just doing what we were doing. And I think it's because we already had that in ourselves to help and to serve.
mhm,
And we were following the calling of God and on our lives, and we just lived that way. And then we just put a title to it, and we just put the educational background to it. We just put the degrees to it, the
mhm,
certifications to it, to things that we already knew, the things. And I don't know if you can say it for yourself, but there's a lot of times when I'm going through trainings and I already know the answer to it because I've already done it.
yeah.
You're looking at it and you're like, yeah, because
Are
you're
yeah.
like, you're
Yes.
like, I've been I've been doing that. Oh, that's what it's called, that kind of
Uh-huh.
thing. Because we just serve from a place of such authenticity that we just lived that life. We walked in aloha. We lived aloha. It didn't have to come from certifications. It didn't have to come from the degrees, you know?
Mhm,
And so Tony Robbins himself will say he doesn't have one. He never went to college. He was
mhm,
self-taught. And look where he is now. So when people say you can't be this person because you don't have this behind you, I could say no, that is not the
mhm.
truth.
That's not
And I
true,
can be
right.
like, I can point to many, many people out there in the world right now who are proving that very statement wrong.
Mhm.
Very, very wrong. But
Agree,
if
agree.
yes. But if you could leave our listeners with one truth about facing fear and finding their worth, what would it be?
I would say there is there is always that ember still alive inside of you, and you can spark that with belief and stoke it with daily action and set it on fire by showing up authentically, even when fear and judgment, show up for you. And some of you are probably already living your dream life, and that's amazing. But I would say for those of you who aren't yet, like, don't lose heart, like, don't lose hope. Maybe you haven't even thought about anything, like, oh, I didn't even know I could have a dream life. So if that's you, then I invite you to think if there's something that's missing in your life, and if there is, what is it? Is there something that you've always wanted to do? If there is, what is it? And then what do you need to do to get it? And if that is you and you haven't, you don't know, it doesn't mean your story's over. It just really means, like, you just haven't found it yet.
Right. That's so good. In your work, Empower Her in Effect and Mental Ninjas. I know I didn't ask much about that, but could you tell us a little bit about that and how our listeners can connect with you? And I will put your links in the show notes when we're complete, but I would love to hear about it. And I know our listeners will too.
Yeah, so mental ninjas. I'm the co-founder of Mental Ninjas. I started with it with a business partner, and originally it was meant to be a platform for, eventually the big picture of it was, to be a platform for new coaches that were just getting started out, that needed help with coaching to get their hours or whatever it was, but to then also offer to individuals at a lower cost coaching, sessions, because coaching can be expensive. So that was like our big vision of it. I will tell you that the site, while it's up and running, since we've built it, we have changed kind of the trajectory of how the business is. So when you go on there, um, it talks a lot about relationship coaching and dealing with heartbreak and things like that. And mine was more still along the realms of confidence coaching, but it is being changed. But you can still go to the site, and I know that it's being worked on. So I'm not sure what's edited out and what isn't, but that's one way. Empower Effect was something that was recent that I started when I really wanted to start doing live events. I really had big visions for it, and I still do. I spell it with empower instead of WER. I spell it with HER because I feel like it encaptures both empowering men and women. And my business partner is a male. So he's like on the other side of me. But I just really, with the world the way it is, I have a vision of it. It is very big. And there's so many little parts to it. And me being a speaker is just like a small, tiny piece. So that you can follow me on my Facebook, my Jennifer Kotel Facebook, and there you'll see a lot more of what I have coming up here in the near future, both in terms of some tiny group challenges, some free tiny group challenges, and some live little events that I'm going to start working on. So if you follow me on Facebook, you'll be able to keep up with everything.
Oh, that's awesome. I like the way that you spell that, empower her. I have two books that will be coming out, and I have to throw it out there because you're gonna be in it, everyone.
Yes, I'm
Jen's
so
gonna be in
excited.
that book, Voices of Aloha, and it'll be for men and for women. So the women's side, it's gonna be Voices of Aloha, Daughters of the King, and Voices of Aloha, Mighty Men of God. And I feel that is really important where we do not to separate men and women, but to kind of like give them their individual importance. Like there's one of the guys that I spoke with or I will be meeting with. He actually has one of his stories in an anthology called Men Mental Health, and it's spelled with men, right? And it's bolded because he was like they were saying men has an easier time of speaking out and talking about things. I mean, not easier, harder. Women
Mhm.
are okay with talking about stuff, but men, they don't have that. So if we can kind of put that importance on that where we can say, I understand that, men have a harder time with putting their feelings out on paper, putting their feelings out there, but yet show them that there are men who will put their stories out there, like in that book, that anthology, Mental Health, and in the anthology that I'm putting out there from Voices of Aloha. It's so good to do that. And as a mental health coach, you know how it is where people have that battle with themselves, right? And that's the
Mhm.
whole thing, that internal battle. So,
Yes.
so good, so good. Thank you so much. Wow, that was just so incredible. Such an amazing conversation with you. And I just thank you so much for being on here. This journey, I know that you mentioned the word journey, seems like, but it is. This journey,
It
this
is.
adventure with you has been amazing. And I just thank you for being on the Walking in Aloha Let's Talk Story podcast.
Yes. Thanks for
And
having me.
yes, it was such a blessing. So many amazing gems. And I know that our listeners can take away all of this. I'm so glad that you are here today. So we just thank you. And everyone, I will be putting the links in the um, show notes and dropping it in the comments, especially on the lives. So on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and on YouTube, I will be dropping Jen's contacts in the comments, in the show notes. So please go ahead and look at that. And we just thank you so much for joining us here on the Walking in Aloha Let's Talk Story podcast. And until the next time, until we have another special guest, we just want to thank you, Jen. Mahalo for coming on the Walking in Aloha Let's Talk Story podcast. Ahui ho, everyone. Until next time.
Thank
Bye.
you.